Jess Sargus, high-performance speaker, certified mental performance mastery coach, and your guide to mastering your mental game. I went from Ivy League trained attorney to undefeated MMA fighter and back again. Now I help high achievers in any field live with fierce agency, deep alignment, and the power to win consistently when it matters most. You can do it all when you train your mindset, energy, and focus like elite athletes. That's why this is the Legal Athlete Podcast, where each week I use neuroscience, performance psychology, and real-world battle-tested strategies to help you unlock sustainable excellence, bold decisions, and the courage to show up each day as the badass you are. Green light. Let's go. Welcome back to the Legal Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it takes to perform, lead, and live like an elite athlete inside and outside the practice of law. I'm your host, Jess Sargus, and today we're talking about one of my favorite topics, how mental performance, discipline, and resilience from sports translate directly to success in the courtroom and in law. My guest today knows that connection better than most. Andrew Pickett is a trial lawyer, a former prosecutor, and the founder of Andrew Pickett Law, PLLC, where he focuses on personal injury and wrongful death. He's tried more than 50 jury trials with multi-million-dollar verdicts to his name and serves as chair of the 18th Circuit Judicial Nominating Commission in Florida. But before all that, Andrew was a collegiate swimmer at the University of Virginia, waking up for 5 a.m. practices, swimming endless laps, and learning the kind of grit and focus that no one can fake. Those lessons now form the foundation of how he practices law, leads his firm, and performs under pressure. So today, we are diving into the mindset and habits behind Andrew's success, how he builds resilience in himself and his team, how he keeps perspective in high-stakes moments, and what it really takes to be a high-performance lawyer in and out of the courtroom. Andrew, welcome to the Legal Athlete Podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me, Jess.
It's my pleasure. So let's talk a little bit about that athlete's edge in the courtroom. You have spoken about how being a collegiate swimmer at UVA taught you grit and the ability to perform under pressure. How do you see those lessons most clearly showing up in your approach to trial work today?
So it was actually back in 2009 where I had my first exposure to watching a jury trial. And while I was in law school and even in my first job, I really had no exposure or even interest in being a trial lawyer. And it was just by happenstance that I had a mentor who encouraged me to watch one of his trials. And when I looked at the attorneys in the courtroom, it reminded me of the competitive nature of being in an athletic event. And so I could picture myself being in that role in that moment. And I thought I would really enjoy this. And so I think it was the nature of performing and preparing and being able to see the fruits of hard work and long hours all culminating into one performance that I think drew for me the parallel between competitive swimming and being a trial lawyer. So I think it began with my exposure to seeing a trial. And ever since I have continued the path of becoming a trial lawyer, there have been a lot of parallels to collegiate swimming. But certainly one of them is being able to perform under pressure and kind of relishing and being excited about the performance itself, as opposed to being really nervous or scared. It was like going into a trial is like going into a swim meet where all of the time that you put into preparing is finally culminating and you get to enjoy the fruits of all your effort.
Yeah, I love that parallel because it really is when you've done the preparation, both in trial and in athletics, you get to use those nerves as interpreting them as excitement. as a test rather than anxiety and fear about being tested. Have you found that to be true, that helps you to stay in that kind of mindset when you're being under pressure?
It does. And I think that a lot of people talk about, even really experienced trial lawyers talk about the fear that they still have. And I think that it's natural to be nervous before a trial, but for me, the fear is never negative or overwhelming. It's more of kind of channeled excitement that I think helps me to perform. And so, yes, I do get nervous, but it's kind of an excited energy rather than something that's destructive. And so walking into the courtroom and hearing the judge bring in the jury for the first time is just kind of a rush for me. And I know that I'm there.
Yeah, it's similar, I think, actually with fighting. I tell people, they don't believe me, but it's true that there is not a single fighter that I know, aside from maybe some psychopaths, that isn't afraid when they're heading into the cage. It's a natural part, but it's what you do with that fear and how you react to it, whether you let it motivate you or derail your focus in an unpredictable and high stakes environment.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot imagine going into a fight because you have a lot more to lose than going into a swim meet or a trial. But the fact that you're able to use that in a positive way, I can definitely relate to.
Yeah. I mean, you've tried more than 50 jury trials, way more than I've ever had experience with. And those are also very high stakes, unpredictable environments, usually not physically endangering you, but they're still high stakes. I mean, particularly for your clients. So are there any specific mental skills or routines or habits that you use to try to stay composed or confident when things don't go according to plan? Like when we were talking about your PowerPoint got thrown out at the last minute.
Yeah, I think that what I try to remind myself, and I tell my clients this, is that there's always going to be something unpredictable that happens in trial. And you just have to rely on all of the preparation that you've done. And I have somebody who has been a mentor for me. His name is Rex Paris. He's a big trial lawyer in California. And he adopts this mindset that I really liked and I try to adopt now, which is inevitably something bad is going to happen in trial. But when something bad happens, you have to say to yourself, I don't know how or why, but this is going to end up helping our case. And I think that that's been a really empowering mindset to have. So understanding that there's a lot that you can't control and just relying on your preparation and just really trusting in yourself. I think that the experience of being a college athlete really teaches you to trust yourself and to bet on yourself. And when you know you've done everything you can to prepare and that inevitably there are going to be things that come up that are unexpected, it just doesn't serve you to freak out about it or worry about it. It serves you better to just take the position that this is going to be fine no matter what. And in fact, what I thought was going to hurt me is actually going to help me. And I found that to be true in unexpected ways many times in trial. So I think those are some things that help. I think another thing that helps is just being really mindful of keeping your cool in front of the judge and the jury and not showing when you're rattled, because I think what it conveys to the jury is that you're not confident. And I think what it conveys to the judge is that you're not professional if you get into shouting matches with opposing counsel or you argue back at the judge. You just have to be really calm and let the other people self-destruct.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've talked about this too. The jury is always watching. Yeah. And if you are cool as a cucumber and non-reactive, then they don't get anxious just watching you. They feel like, oh, well, he must have it figured out. Yeah. Like let the other guy be the yappy dog and you can be the big dog.
That's absolutely true. And I think that I have another mentor. His name is Josh Carton. And he used to say that the way that you need to view your role with respect and your role in your relationship to the jury is that you're there to protect them. and they are, and to protect them from falsehoods. And you're there as a leader to guide them to the truth. And so they're relying on you to feel safe in the courtroom and to feel validated for all the investment that they made in the trial. And so your demeanor needs to reflect that expected role. And like you said, they're always watching. And one of the things we talked about too is that they don't have their cell phones during the whole trial. And so they don't have opportunities to be distracted. So they're going to focus in on all of the minutia that's going on. And so that's why it's even more important for you to maintain this sense of control and composure.
Yeah, control and composure, it's not even just how you are perceived, but I think that in itself is setting you up for better performance too, because you have to be calm enough to maintain a sense of mental agility and creativity. And if you're in panic mode, it's very hard. I could go into the neuroscience and bore everyone, but it's very hard for that executive function to be primary when you're pumping yourself through with cortisol and trying to think as clearly and as effectively for your client as possible.
Yeah, you don't want to be controlled by your amygdala.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with respect to kind of the trial aspect of like not getting too nervous, I think that something else that plays into that for trial lawyers especially is your own sense of self-worth and kind of separating that from the outcome of the trial. And so when you do everything that you can to prepare and you have that confidence, you've done everything you can, then the outcome is whatever the outcome is going to be. And if you lose a trial or you don't get the verdict that you want, I think it's important to keep it in perspective and know that your self-worth is not tied to the outcome of the trial. And I think that creates some peace that allows, at least for me, to feel a little bit more calm during the trial.
You landed on something so critical there that is a key pillar of what I've defined as an elite athlete mindset, which is this process over outcome focus. And it's important for so many reasons, one of which, like you're talking about, is I think the fastest way to lose your confidence is to tie your self-worth and your value to a particular outcome. And I mean, just paraphrasing what you just said, but defining yourself that way rather than in all of the moments leading up to the outcome, when you've gone through the process, when you've taken the steps to do your best, to learn, to grow, to prepare, that's where the confidence really comes from. And when you focus on all of those steps that you've completed in a positive and productive way, rather than an outcome that ultimately isn't in your hands. You can control the process. You can't control the outcome. So I think that's really great for everyone listening to remember, is that you control the process, but the outcome isn't in your hands. And so the way that you should judge yourself is, what did I have control over? And did I do my best during that portion, that process?
Exactly. And I think there's a parallel to that too with managing the expectations of the client, because a lot of clients want to know what you think is going to happen. And what I tell my clients is that I can never give any guarantees about what a jury is going to do. And really nobody can. But what you can do is control the things that are within your kind of sphere of influence and create the highest likelihood of a successful result. So you can take the steps to have the highest probability of a good outcome, but you can never guarantee what the result's going to be. And there are so many kind of crucial inflection points during the litigation where you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you can have a reasonable prediction based on doing everything to prepare. And you can predict a probability of an outcome, but you can never guarantee it. And I think when I start messaging that to my clients early on in the representation, it makes it a lot better when you get to trial, so that they're not disappointed when you get an outcome that is less than what they were expecting. And I've kind of had to learn that the hard way. So I had a trial a couple of years ago where We had gone to trial, and I think I had asked for like $4 million, and the jury came back with the verdict of 1.5 million, which was still a really good result for this particular case. It was a tough case. And after the trial, the client said, "Well, at least it's better than nothing." So she was kind of expressing disappointment, not really understanding that, you're usually not going to get what you ask for. And I think had I managed the expectations better at the outset and prepared the client for the fact that you can't guarantee the outcome and you're usually not going to get what you ask for, I think I would have been better at the end as far as my relationship with that client. So I think some of these things you have to learn the hard way, but for that lesson really stuck for me. And since then, I've really been intentional about communicating expectations and managing expectations early.
I mean, they're already fraught, right? They've been hurt. They've been, through depositions or a lengthy process, through their own medical recovery, and they're in an unfamiliar environment. And so they don't know what to expect.
Right.
And our brains are always going to tell us stories about what's going to happen. And so the more information that you can have, just like you're saying, the more inputs that you can have to influence the story that a client tells themselves, the better it's going to be, the more accurate it's going to be. And I think the better relationship that you're going to have with your client.
For sure.
You've obviously learned a ton through practice, but I'd love to talk a little bit more about some of the advanced trial training that you've also invested in, like the Gerry Spence Trial Lawyers College and the Voir dire Institute. What do you think it is that drives your commitment to that kind of continuous growth?
Yeah, so I think it began with, I think, some good mentorship that I had as a prosecutor. I had a really good supervisor at the time. Her name was Michelle Perlman. And what she encouraged me to do was to go watch as many trials as I could. And so I did that. And it was really, looking back, pretty amazing that she allowed and encouraged that. 'Cause I think that the people who are prosecutors now don't have that freedom. So I would go ask all of the judges who were the best trial attorneys and find out when they were in trial and go watch them. So I think that my hunger for it was encouraged by that freedom that she gave me. And then when I was a prosecutor, I had heard about a program at the University of Florida that was for prosecutors and public defenders, where it was like a simulated trial experience where you actually got feedback from experienced lawyers and judges, and they would critique you and they would actually videotape you. And so you could see your own mannerisms, which was really eye-opening. So I did that, I think, about a year into my career. And that was the first experience I had in like kind of advanced trial training and getting feedback. And I got so much out of that experience that I just sought out opportunities to do that throughout my career. So I first started as a personal injury attorney in 2013. And at the time, I was involved in this organization called the Florida Bar Young Lawyers Division Board of Governors. And I got to know a friend of mine, Zach Zurwest, who was over on the west coast of Florida. And he had gone through the Trial Lawyers College that Gerry Spence had put on up in Wyoming. And he told me all about it, and it was really fascinating. And so what he told me was that you spend 3 weeks in Wyoming and you go through really intense, like, personal development work as well as trial work. And you have to do these things that are like kind of intentionally put you in a really uncomfortable position. So everybody who graduates from the Trial Lawyers College, if you have like 50 people in a class, you have to stand up on a picnic table in this big barn and you have to sing a song in front of everybody. And so I heard about that. That was really fascinating. You also have to write an original poem and then deliver that poem to the whole group. And then you're also working like during the entire first week on intense personal work with a technique called psychodrama, which is kind of like a group therapy, improvisational role play where you kind of explore your past and understand how different experiences in your life shaped you. And so I heard about that in 2013, and that was right when I started as a personal injury attorney, and I really wanted to go. And I was working for a firm at the time, and I told them every year that I wanted to go, but they never wanted me to be away for 3 weeks. And so I had to wait until I started my own firm to go there. But that was always a very strong interest for me. I was able to go to a lot of continuing legal education seminars. And one of the ones that I went to for the Florida Justice Association was put on, well, one of the speakers was Mark Lanier, who's a big time trial attorney in Houston, probably one of the best in the country. And so I heard him speak and found out that he was doing a seminar, and I think his was only 3 days. So my firm let me go to that one. And I went to that seminar just about every year for like 10 years and got a ton out of that. And so I think that my interest in like reflecting now in the trial seminar work was based a lot on my appreciation for the importance of coaches and mentors, and just the recognition and the desire to improve and to get better and to set goals, which I think is kind of traced back to swimming. So Mark Lanier became a mentor for me. When I started my own firm, I got to go to the Trial Lawyers College in 2018, and I think that added another dimension to my development. So I think, to answer your question, it was motivated by an inherent desire to improve, a recognition of the role of mentors and coaches, and just a perfect environment at the beginning of my career where that type of growth was encouraged. And then I think as I've been in the civil world more, where you're not in court as much as being a prosecutor, what I've recognized is that, the most amount of trials that I've ever done in a year in civil is 5. And that's not a lot on a week to week or month to month basis. So recognizing that I might be doing, 3 or 4 trials a year, how am I going to get the reps in to continue to improve? And a lot of that comes from kind of continuing education, especially the types of seminars where you're performing and getting feedback.
You hit on something else, I think, that is a huge benefit to professional growth, which is that sports background appreciation for coaching and mentorship. There's a lot of, you even see it in law school, folks who are gunners and they think that they can do it all by themselves, right? They're too busy competing with everyone. Right. They sit in the front row. They're too busy competing with everyone else to realize the benefit of coaching and mentorship. And and I think when you have a sports background, like, it's automatic. Like, of course you're going to have a coach, and a coach will help you get better. And I think the business world has been coming around to the idea that coaching can help you with your business growth too. And probably in the last 10, 15 years, the legal world is starting to accept that more. I mean, yes, trial advocacy, that's been that kind of training has been around, but the benefits of continuous training, not just special events, but also having coaches and mentors in the law that can help you continue to improve. I love what I'm seeing about how much that's been started to weave into the culture of legal practice too. Have you seen the same thing?
Absolutely. And I think that coaching is so important. I've got a lot to say about this because I was really influenced a lot by coaches early on in my swimming career. So my main coach in junior high and high school, his name is Terry Schlickenmeyer, and he instilled in me a lot of self-confidence and I think self-esteem, and he really believed in me and my ability to be great. And I remember this is something he used to say when people were not trying as hard as they could be in swimming. He would say, "Don't you want to be great?" And that phrase always stuck with me. And I also had a really influential college coach, Mark Bernardino, who really believed in me and challenged me. And so I've always been drawn to coaches for the purpose that they can make you better. And I think that as I've grown as a business owner and as a trial lawyer and just as a person, I've recognized the importance of coaches because I think recognizing the need for coaches requires humility, which is to understand that you can always be better and there's going to be somebody else who knows a certain area better than you. And so I've really invested a lot in all types of coaches, and it's made a huge difference. So, I mean, I certainly have kind of informal mentors on the trial side. Like I mentioned, Mark Lanier, Gerry Spence, he just passed away a few months ago. So I have informal mentors, but I also have, I think on the personal side, like I go see a therapist. I've been working with a mindset coach. I work with a health and fitness coach. There are a lot of opportunities to improve in my life by learning from somebody who knows more than I do and who can help hold me accountable, just like my high school or college swimming coach was pushing me. So I've gotten a lot of benefit from that. And what you said about the kind of the difference between like the competitiveness aspect and like, I think what I took from that is like being overly competitive, like with other people. I really realized this in recent years can get you stuck in a scarcity mindset. Because the idea is that like there's not enough opportunity to go around. And what I've really tried to adopt is an abundance mindset around my own growth and sharing of information. And I think if everybody were to hoard information and not share their knowledge to help other people get better, I think that as a whole in different industries, like we just wouldn't be improving as much as we did. And so I think that what I really appreciate about some elite trial lawyers is their willingness to share information. And I think that hasn't always been the case. I think it's emerging more. I've got a really good mentor and friend out in Las Vegas, Sean Claggett, who I've actually consulted with on a case. I don't know if you know him, but I think he's just the epitome.
Jury ball.
Oh yeah, jury ball. Sean is awesome, and he's somebody who really is very giving about sharing of knowledge, and he has achieved so much in his career, but he's not one of these people who hoards information or is standoffish, and he's really good about making other people feel important and believe that they can achieve similar results. And I think it's just an incredible quality. I think we need more of that in kind of the leadership of the legal world, because I think that there's a perception, especially among kind of the old guard of lawyers, that people would like keep secrets and hoard information, and they wouldn't share it because the idea would be somebody else is going to use it and outperform them. But I think that's based on a scarcity mentality that really is not very attractive to me. So as I've been kind of growing in this mindset, I've been thinking a lot about like kind of the tension between competitiveness, which I've been drawn to in the athletic world, versus that being an excess where it's leading to a scarcity mindset. So I think at the end of the day, I'm not competing with other people. I'm competing with myself. And the more that I view the world in an abundant way, I think the more that the universe has to give to me, and the more that I can give to other people and receive from other people. And the people that I most admire as mentors are the people who are really sharing about information.
I love that you brought scarcity versus abundance into this conversation, because I think you're exactly right. That when you think of legal practice as pie, right? And if someone else gets a slice, you don't get that slice. When it's not, we know there are all too many clients and people who need our help, but that when you have the idea that everyone doing better helps you and them, that you can increase everyone's outcome by sharing information and sharing expertise, rather than again being worried about you getting yours. It just changes the dynamic. It is fundamentally, I think, additive when you have that kind of abundance mindset, because it impacts how you move through the world as well. You stop playing not to lose, you start playing to win. You're more proactive when you realize that there's enough to go around. And the more generous that you are with your time and your information, the more it comes back to you as well, sometimes in unexpected ways, right?
For sure. And I think that in the plaintiffs world in particular, we as a plaintiffs bar are actually a lot better than the defense bar about sharing information. And I think that in addition to it helping everybody improve and get better, it's also just massively beneficial to our clients. And when we share information, everybody gets better, and the client outcomes get better. And I think we're seeing that a lot, especially over the last 5 years, and like the trend with jury verdicts. I think a lot of that is a result of the availability of information sharing and the willingness of people to help fellow plaintiffs, lawyers out. So that really makes me proud to be part of this profession, especially on the plaintiff side, is the sharing of information for a common good. And I really appreciate the people who have shared information with me.
I love that aspect. And I met Sean Claggett at Trial Lawyers University last year in Las Vegas in October. A good friend of mine, Jun Hong, works at his firm, and introduced me. And it wasn't even just Sean, though, but everyone at the Trial Lawyers University conference. I was struck by how generous they were with their information. And it was a different kind of conference rather than like just kind of going to obligatory seminars. It really was far more interactive. Like, hey, I need you to get this and understand it because it's going to help you. And I love that feeling. And particularly, getting to talk with Sean, he just lives that as well. How do you, I guess, pay it forward inside your firm too? How do you maintain this kind of growth mindset for the people? And and this is going to be a really complex question, but there's a part of it that's inherent, right? You've mentioned your own inherent desire to grow and change, but I think a fundamental part of believing in a growth mindset is that you believe in anyone's capacity to grow and improve. So how do you try to encourage that inside your firm as well?
Yeah, that's a really important value for me and the people that I hire and retain. So a lot of it is screening at the outset in the hiring process and looking for people who really want to do great things. We just hired a new attorney at the office, and one of the questions that I will ask people is, what are your long-term goals? How does this opportunity serve your long-term goals? And for people who can't answer that well, I think it's pretty telling that they don't have clearly defined long-term goals. The attorney that we just hired just said very clearly and confidently, I want to become a board certified civil trial attorney, and I want to have a stellar reputation. Those are the two most important things to me. And that really struck me. And so I think that identifying it early on, I mean, I do agree that the growth mindset can be developed. And we've seen that within our own firm. I mean, even myself and my firm administrator, we've kind of gone through a personal development journey in the ownership of a law firm. I mean, some people say that owning a business is the best journey for personal development because you see a lot of your own like personal tendencies manifest themselves in the business. So, the shortcomings that I have in my relationship with my wife and my communication deficiencies can spill over into the practice or are paralleled in the practice. So I've been on a journey myself and becoming more self-aware and developing more of a growth mindset. And I've seen that with people at my firm, but we're really emphasizing at our firm, and one of our core values is dedication to continuous improvement. And so when we're hiring people, we explicitly tell them what our core values are. And if they don't get excited by our core values, then they're probably not the right fit. And so I think a lot of it is the screening process and then kind of what we decide to tolerate and not tolerate at the firm. We're really big on creating a positive, optimistic work environment where people are looking for opportunities to solve problems and are really excited about the future, as opposed to people who are kind of more toxic and tend to complain about things. So I think a lot of it comes from the top down as far as setting the tone, but it's also recognizing early on what kind of tendencies people have and trying to identify people at the outset who share in that vision or at least are attracted to it.
I think the vision and the orientation, I'll say, that someone has to begin with definitely does a lot of work, because as much as you can help anyone, it's much easier when they're farther down the path that you don't have to encourage quite as much. They're naturally inclined in that way. And I love when you spoke about, seeing how someone reacts to your core values. And for me, core values is also just intricately tied to your mission. And I know for your mission, it's centered on widening access to justice and helping clients rebuild their lives. How do you think that staying connected to that deeper purpose for your work helps fuel your own motivation and mental toughness, and that of your team through that grind of trial prep and leadership and just case administration?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something that I've thought a lot about. I think when the purpose is higher than the individual or even the firm's needs, I think it's easier for clients to get motivated. And what we try to do a lot is to have even the people who aren't working on cases hear about client stories, and especially client success stories. We really prioritize customer satisfaction and getting really good reviews from our clients. And so we have our marketing director share the positive reviews with the team. And I think that's really motivating, so that, people are excited about being part of a firm that values changing the lives of our clients. So, and I think it kind of all flows together. So for myself, I want to have a really successful practice, but I also want to have a really good life and a really fulfilling life. And I want to feel that when I'm coming to work every day, that is an act that is life-giving and that is supportive of my life outside of work. And so I want other people in the firm to feel like that as well, so that they're having satisfying careers and satisfying lives. And then that's also flowing through to the client, is that we want to exert our efforts and our time and influence on really transforming their lives and helping them to rebuild their lives after an injury. So I think when the people on the team can rally behind that purpose, it makes them a lot more satisfied. And we place a lot of emphasis in our firm on doing community events. And so I think it all kind of ties together. We have, the personal growth aspect, the kind of symbiotic nature of work and life integrating together, our emphasis on having our employees have a good satisfaction in the job that is tied to our client satisfaction. So I think it's all connected.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's beautiful. And to me, it makes it so much less surprising. Not that it was surprising to begin with, but it makes it follow on very logically the kind of success that you've been able to achieve, because you've got all of the pieces working together. And I love also that you mentioned that happy lawyers do great work, that if you have a fulfilling life that is a complete life, that when you come to work and you're trying to help clients have the same thing, that you can do better work. You've got that energy, that alignment that I think is the key to next level high performance, right?
Definitely. And I think that the life that you have outside of work really feeds into your authenticity as a trial lawyer. So, and even going through difficult experiences personally, helps you to relate to your clients in an authentic way. So I have a wrongful death trial that starts in Tampa in 11 days. And I have dealt with loss in my life, my father dying young. And then I also have the experience of having now an 8-year-old stepson. And when I think about, in this case, it was a death of a 32-year-old son. So the parents are the survivors. I think about how difficult times and challenging times and also positive times in my own life have allowed me to relate more to my clients. So I think that there's really not a a separation between work and life in the sense that they're kind of mutually complementary. And the experiences that you have in life, especially as a trial lawyer, I think bring a lot more depth to the representation, the advocacy that you do in the courtroom.
Absolutely. Well, this has been such a great conversation, Andrew. Thank you for sharing so much of how you think about law and leadership and development and growth. I have one more question for you. It's my favorite question to ask all of the folks who come on the podcast. I stole it from Oprah Winfrey, so that's a pretty good provenance to me. And the question is, what is one thing that you know for sure? And it could be about life, about legal practice, about, the sky. It could be anything. But what is one thing in life that you know for sure?
Well, I think kind of related to what we talked about earlier, I think what I know for sure is that the universe is abundant and that we can all create our own lives exactly how we want them by choosing our thoughts and our habits and our actions. And that's something that I've really tried to embrace, especially in recent years. And I think when I stay in that mindset is when I feel most fulfilled and when I feel most certain. So that's what I know for certain.
I love it. I love it. That kind of, dare I say, fierce agency is a key to tapping into that universal abundance. I love it. So thank you so much for being on and for sharing all your perspectives, Andrew. Wish you luck in your upcoming trial in 11 days. And we'll be talking again real soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was such a powerful conversation with Andrew Pickett, a real example of what it looks like to bring an athlete's mindset into the practice of law. From those 5 a.m. swim practices to his 50-plus jury trials, Andrew's story is a reminder that grit, preparation, and perspective are muscles that you build long before you ever step into the courtroom. You need to show up, do the reps, and stay composed when things don't go your way, because that's where real confidence and excellence are made. If you're listening and you want to take your performance to the next level, start by asking yourself, where in my work am I waiting for conditions to be perfect instead of just getting after it? Because high-performance lawyering, like elite athletics, doesn't require you to be perfect. All you need is a growth mindset, action orientation, and present moment focus on how you can bring excellence to your process without tying your whole self-worth to an outcome outside of your control. That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Legal Athlete Podcast. If today's episode fired you up or gave you something to train with, hit follow, leave a review, and share it with a fellow high achiever who's ready to raise their game. Want to bring this energy to your team, firm, or event? Or are you ready to train for your next high-stakes moment with me directly? Click the link in the show notes to connect. I'm Jess Sargus, and I coach the bold, lawyers, leaders, and anyone ready to lead their life with fierce agency. Green light. Let's go.